Hi, welcome to the TLC Professional Development Series. I'm not Dawn Saucier. I'm filling in today for the Teaching and Learning Center's Professional Development Series, which is where you found yourselves. Um, I'm going to bear with me because I'm navigating the admittance and the Zoom. I'm just not as accustomed to it as I once was, and I'm not sad about that. So I'm going to get started. I'll give it another 30 seconds for people to get in here because I know that a lot of times people join just after the noon hour. I'm always one of those people like, oh, it's noon. I should now start thinking about logging on. Um, that's the way I run my life. Usually Don announces what's next week. I don't have that up. I should have. Let's see. Next week, there's also going to be a professional development series event on Wednesday at noon because it's every Wednesday at noon. And let me see if I can tell you what the event's going to be. So today's February 25th. Next week's March 4th. Next week is going to be led by Trina McCarty, one of our fabulous instructional designers. And so that will be an exciting event to look forward to. We'll get started with today's event. I'm going to share my screen. All right. Are we seeing my screen? We good? Excellent. All right. So today I'm talking about cultivating motivation to promote lifelong learning. Um, I have here an overview of what I will be talking about today. So we'll start by reflecting on our own experiences and motivations in our various disciplines. Then I will share with you my hot take on cultivating lifelong learners. We'll examine a framework to understand motivation among our students, explore some concrete strategies to help us promote motivation in our classes. And then I'll share ideas and approaches, or we'll all share ideas and approaches from our own teaching context. So I like to keep things very informal. So if you have comments, questions at any point, feel free to drop them in the chat or unmute and ask or comment. That is welcome all the way through. And then I plan to leave plenty of time for discussion because I feel like that's where the really fruitful conversations come in, is when we have a chance to actually talk to each other and discuss and collaborate. So we'll start with a waterfall activity. So take a moment to consider what made you decide to pursue a career in your discipline. You can put this in the chat. What made you decide to pursue a career in your discipline? Think about it for a minute and then wait to hit enter. We'll all hit enter at the same time. So I'm going to give you a minute. And if you're just joining us, we're taking a minute to think about what made us pursue a career in our discipline. We're putting it in the chat. We haven't hit enter yet. We're about to. I'm going to give it another 30 seconds. Okay. And three, two, one, go. All right. So, to help solve social issues in my community, fabulous answer. I was inspired by a former teacher and I dislike writing papers. So I picked math and French teaching. I love that. I dislike math, so I chose languages. I've always been fascinated with the brain and how we learn and what neurobiological process guide our behavior. Yeah, I feel that. You loved reading as a child. So yes, all these things about things that we are drawn to, things that we love, things that people who we've met who've inspired us. Um, these are responses that typically come up when I have done this activity. Love eating vegetables, so chose horticulture. Oh my gosh, I love that so much. So these are things that often come up when I ask people what got them into their discipline, why they decided to pursue it. Usually it's something like I had a teacher who really inspired me, or a family member or a friend, or they're just fascinated with a subject matter and they have this curiosity, this drive to learn more. Or they feel like I'm really good at this and it makes me feel good when I do this thing. I've never heard somebody say, because I got an A on an exam or because I got a C on an exam. And so that makes me think, when approaching our classes, my hot take brings me to my hot take is that relying on points and grades to motivate students is inconsistent with promoting lifelong learning. So if we want our students to enjoy learning and continue to learn and be interested in our discipline beyond the classroom, beyond the bounds of the semester, then we need to think about engaging them and trying to cultivate that motivation that goes beyond the grades, because we're not going to be able to continue motivating them that way at the end of the semester. And I'm not saying that that means you don't have grades or that you don't evaluate student work, but when we're thinking about how to approach our classes, what ways can we engage student motivation that is not based in points? Because I hear that a lot from participants, from people, educators who say, oh, I just, students don't do this unless there's points attached to it. So I motivate them to do it by, assigning points to an activity. And to a certain extent, right? Like something has to count for the course. It has to feel relevant. But we're going to explore additional strategies that we can use in conjunction with point values. So, how do I motivate my students if not with points and grades? Um, I take a self-determination theory approach, which asserts that there's three basic psychological needs that all people have. That's the need for autonomy, the need for competence, and the need for relatedness. And these three basic psychological needs drive motivation and they drive just basic general well-being, which I think we can all agree is what we want for our students and in our classes, right? So to go through what each of these are, I'm going to start with uh, autonomy. So autonomy, we can understand autonomy as an individual's need to self-regulate and to self-endorse their choices and behavior. It's an acceptance and a feeling of commitment, even when the choice doesn't come from within. So meaning that sometimes, we assign something, it's not the student's choice. The student's taking the course because it's part of a requirement. They haven't chosen to be there. But fostering some buy-in, like how do we get students to feel like, oh, this is worthwhile, right? That's part of autonomy, is students feeling like there's a reason for me doing this. I feel that there's value in what I'm doing. And I'm committed to doing it, even if it wasn't my choice to be here to do this, right? So that's autonomy. Competence. We can refers to an individual's need to feel capable in a given skill. So it's the opportunity and ability to gain mastery or develop a perceived higher understanding of one's talent. This is paramount to developing a growth mindset that would then lead to an overall purpose of experience, right? So this feeling that like, oh, I have the tools that I need to be able to do the task that I'm being asked to do or to do the things that I want to do, right? When you feel competent at what you're doing, you feel a lot more motivated to do it, right? I think that we can all imagine a time where we were asked to do something that we didn't feel competent in, and it can be very frustrating. It can feel very uncomfortable to be in those situations. And so when we give students the tools that they need to be successful, and place things at a level that they are competent to do them at, they're going to be much more motivated. So, and then our third psychological need is relatedness. And relatedness is concerned primarily with an individual's sense of place or belonging within a broader context. It's not just about being cared for, um, but and understood by the group, but also being able to contribute. So being a contributing member of a group, having people care for you and caring for others in that group. Scholars also identify personalization and an environment that provides space for learners to connect and empathize as a shared community as important factors in relatedness satisfying contexts. So I think about this as ways that we can be connected with the students directly, the ways that students connect with each other in the class, the ways that they connect with the course content, with their own personal experiences, and the ways that they connect that with the broader world. So thinking about lots of different connections and the ways that things are related. So then how can I foster autonomy, competence, and relatedness in my class? Well, I have a number of strategies that I have picked up, used that I use in my classes that I'm going to share with you. And then we're going to brainstorm some additional ways that we can uh, think about fostering motivation in our classes, because I'm sure that you all also have some great ideas. And I think that when we share our ideas, we become much better educators. So I'll go through this list and then I'll go through one by one and kind of give some examples of what I mean by these. So first of all, considering first impressions, use language to promote motivation, step back to see the big picture, provide clear rationale for what you're doing in your classroom, involve students in class decisions, and offer transparency in evaluation. So let's start with considering first impressions. So here we have a nice little meme. Trust is built on first impressions. So I think about this not only when I walk in on the first day of class and how my students are perceiving me, how they're perceiving the course content, but also thinking about all the little first impressions that students are getting throughout the semester. So the first impressions of an assignment, right? When you give them an assignment for the first time, what are the impressions that they have of the assignment and how are we introducing it? How are we introducing new content when we get to a new unit or a new topic? How do we present that to our students and thinking about how we can do that in a way that feels inviting and related to what they're wanting to do, right? Connecting that relatedness piece. Um, And then conveying your message. So, thinking about the language that we use with students, I have made a pretty big effort over the years to try to change the way that I discuss assignments, where I often used to talk about things that were required or mandatory for class or things that the students must do. I've tried to start pulling that language out of my courses and use language that promotes choice, that promotes more decision on the student's part, right? So I invite you to do things, I use things like you could do this. I suggest that you do this. You have an opportunity to do this, right? So that I'm not making demands, but if you want to be successful in the class, I would suggest that you do this. Here's ways that you can do this well. Here's ways that you can be successful, rather than controlling language. In terms of changing my language to support competence, avoiding falling into the false dichotomy of like there's a correct and an incorrect way to do things. There might be a more appropriate way to do something, a way that's more that might be more typical of your discipline, right? Like in this discipline, it's typical that we do this. That doesn't mean that another way of doing something is necessarily wrong, but it might not be preferable. And so really trying to get into the nuance with students and be more clear about like, appropriate ways to do things. I also like focusing on achieving clear objectives. So this is our objective. Are you hitting it? Yes or no? That helps them to feel that competence. Provide clear and manageable steps to complete assignments, so that they have that like, oh, okay, this is what I need to do. I know what I have to do to complete this assignment. And then relatedness, avoiding impersonal statements, punitive language, phrasing that conveys distrust, or assumptions of homogenous experiences, right? Like, oh, well, you all are from Kansas, you all have this experience, you all have this background. The students are different. They're all their own individuals, and so making sure that we're embracing that. And then also reminding students of their role as a contributing member to the learning community, that they're there, their presence in the class changes the class dynamic. And when they're there and contributing to the class, it makes the class better because we get a new perspective. And so that can also be really helpful in validating students' decision to come to class, to participate in class, and feel connected to what they're doing in the classroom. So then, thinking about stepping back and looking at the big picture, I think it's important to regularly kind of step back and think about what's important, right? Like it's easy to focus on like, oh, I need to cover this theory. I need to talk about this topic. I need to get into like these details. But then to periodically pull back and ask, why is this important? Why do my students need to know this theory? Why are we exploring this topic? Um, why do we, ooh, there we go. Why are we exploring the knowledge, skills, and context that we are? That then helps us to, one, articulate why we're doing what we're doing, and helps with that relatedness piece that students see like, oh, I see there's a purpose for what we're doing here. And that in turn supports autonomy. So it's easy to get into the weeds for us academics, I think, and focus on the little things, right? Like this theory is really important and we know why it's important, but sometimes it's good for us to step back and think about, okay, why is this important to students and why do I want to share this? All right. So, um, next, provide justification for course content and assignments. So rather than students just feeling like they're jumping through hoops like this very cute dog, we want to give them a direction and explain, this is why we've set this up this way. This is why I'm asking you to explore this topic. This is why I've designed this aspect this way, so that students, even if they don't like the assignment, even if they don't care for it, even if they disagree with you, they're like, okay, there's a reason that I'm being asked to do this. That helps them to feel more invested in wanting to do the work, that it's not just me telling them to jump through hoops for an unclear reason. And then this is one that I love and I think is great, is involving students in pedagogical decisions. So obviously, not every decision that would really bog down the class, but where appropriate, I think it's nice to offer students options. And so, for example, in a course that I was teaching last year on bilingualism and cognition, I had students, I wanted them to do a project. The first part of the project was a lit review. So I'm like, okay, find out what has been studied on this topic and I want you to present this in writing. So we looked at different ways that we could present it in writing, like a written report on what has been done, an annotated bibliography. We looked at a couple different options, read about kind of a brief description of what they were. And the students then chose collectively, like, we want to do an annotated bibliography. And so then we went into more depth about, okay, what is an annotated bibliography and how do we create one? And so the students were involved in not only choosing what the task was, but then also how we defined the task for our purposes, like how many different items should they read? How do we create an annotated bibliography for our class specifically? Um, I think that really helped the students with buy-in, and they had a clear idea of what they needed to do, and they were the ones who had made the choice. Yeah, students are responsible for their learning. And so giving them involvement in pedagogical decisions does give them more stake in their learning. So like our courses are for them, right? It's for them to learn. And so the more we can give up the reins and give choice, I think the better it is for them. They feel like their voices are being heard and they can do things that are in line with what their personal goals are. And so I also, that's another way that I like to involve students in pedagogical decisions is ask them, what are their career goals and how does our course content align with what they want to do professionally and how can we incorporate that into our course assignments? So that can be useful. Um, Transparency in assessment is another thing that's near and dear to my heart. Anybody who's talked to me for more than 5 minutes will probably hear me talk about things like this. And transparency in assessment, there's a framework, TILT, Transparency in Learning and Teaching, I believe is what that stands for, that talks about purpose for assessment. So making clear, like, why am I asking you to do this? Having defined task instructions so that the students know like what it is they need to do. There's competence right there. And clear criteria descriptions of how they will be evaluated. This is a piece where I also like to involve students and have them help me define criteria for evaluation. Like, how are we going to evaluate this project? What makes a good annotated bibliography, for instance? And so they're involved in thinking critically about, okay, what is important here? Why am I being asked to look at this thing? Are 3 sources enough? Does that give you enough information on the topic to be able to speak knowledgeably about it? Or do we really need to get a few more than that? Is it more like 10? Having students involved in those discussions. And I don't leave it 100% to them. I am also involved in those discussions. So I often have people ask like, oh, but what if the students say like this thing is how the evaluation should be defined and you don't agree? I'm like, well, I have a voice. And I'll say, well, like in our field, this is what I would expect. I don't think that we get the same amount of whatever if we're doing this. And I let it open a dialogue with the students. And if they can convince me, then great. Ultimately, I have the final say, but it's important to have those conversations. And then having models and showing them examples of what a successful assignment looks like, how they can be successful in their work. Is really crucial so that we're not just saying like, okay, write an annotated bibliography without them ever having seen what one is, without them knowing what it is. So if they can see what an example of a good annotation is and dissect why it's a good annotation, that helps them to understand. It gives them the knowledge, and then they feel more competent in being able to do it themselves. So we can open it up now and think about what ways do you or could you support autonomy, competence, and relatedness in your teaching? Feel free to use the chat or
Andie, I
open up
sent
your
you
mic.
a question. I know how I
How
deal
do
with
you
it.
argue against people who say showing examples encourage copying? I would say ChatGPT encourages copying, first of all. And not showing examples, there is plenty of evidence that indicates that not showing examples and not being clear about what the expectations are is what most often leads to students using excessive outside help like ChatGPT, like improper help from a friend. And so really thinking about, okay, what is it that I want them to do? You can't produce something without having seen what it is. And when you personalize assignments enough, when you really make them think about like, how is this relevant to you, then it shouldn't be that they shouldn't be able to just copy a model. They should be using it as a model. And I think that that's very appropriate. I think that that's also human nature. We all tend to kind of mimic what we've seen. I think you see that a lot in teaching, which is oftentimes a detriment to teaching, is that people tend to teach the way they have been taught unless they take steps to learn other ways, right? To go deeper, to think critically about their teaching. And so I think that human nature is to kind of model, look at what we see in our world and then kind of copy that.
But I also think,
Yeah,
though,
yes.
Andy, that we can also use the
Good
fact that
question.
we
I
have
love to give
precedent.
examples so students see where the
Yeah.
bar is for high quality work. Absolutely. Sometimes they really don't know that it's much higher than they expect. Sometimes they also don't know that it's lower than they expect. Sometimes when they see an example, they're like, oh, that's what I'm expected to do? That I can do that. And so I think students get in their head about like what is or isn't appropriate. And if we don't give them kind of a benchmark, a measuring stick to see like this is good, this is like less good, um, then like they just don't know. I also like to include weak examples for students and have them analyze like strong examples and weak examples without telling them. Well, sometimes I tell them, but have them evaluate work themselves. Like, what makes this a strong example? What makes this a weak example? What could be better? That gets them to start critically thinking about, oh, okay, this information is missing, or it's not clear here what this is talking about. And then we have another comment. Oop, I can use the comments. Yes. I think it depends on the assignment. There have definitely been moments as a student where I have needed to find examples outside of class, um, when I didn't understand what something was supposed to look like, but sometimes giving an example, some level of copying. I mean, or I mean, that's yeah, that's always there's always going to be some students who really depend more heavily on the model, and some who are able to take it and kind of use it just as a model. I think
Um,
that's part of learning, and I
I
think that
think
that
that
gives valuable insight as to where the students are when they need to really depend heavily on the model. You see that they are still developing, right? And I feel like that's appropriate.
I think
In
something
learning is
else
that students start out not
is like
knowing
the visual aspect. For
things that we're
me, I
asking.
need a visual.
And so the students that need to rely more heavily on that model, then we give them feedback as to how to move away from the models to produce more of their own work. I personally like getting examples from my teachers because I need to see what is visually expected as well as content, 100%. Examples give students time figuring out expectations so they can focus their time on doing their own work. Yes, this is one thing that I like to say a lot is that the process of learning is so cognitively heavy that I want to make the instructions for what they need to do as cognitively light as possible. I don't want them to spend that cognitive load on just trying to figure out what it is that I'm asking them to do. Oh, are you guys speaking? Oh my
Yes.
God.
I think two
Oh, it's
people
a
were.
my problem.
Yeah,
Can you hear us?
Karamatu, I'm sorry.
it's okay.
Here, I'm gonna try something here. Let's see.
Melissa and I were both
Hello?
talking, and you couldn't hear us. You couldn't hear us.
Now I can hear you. I am sorry. I was like, man, this is a really quiet group.
How about me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Karma. I'm sorry. Then it was
Uh,
my fault the whole time.
yeah.
Earlier, Karamatu got on, and I was like, yeah, your audio's not working. And it didn't even cross my mind that it was my problem.
Okay, thank God.
Sorry about that. All right.
I just wanted to say I think with the examples thing, it also depends on how much detail you put in the example. Because I like a visual example. I don't obviously the instructions are going to tell you what information is supposed to be in there, but
Yeah.
sometimes certain things like resumes or like CVs, stuff like that. Like in my French class right now, we're doing French CV and it's different than an American
Mm.
one. But there's still that level of like how much color are you supposed to put on it? What does the formatting look like, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Mhm.
and then also seeing a couple, especially with something like a CV, because there's different approaches and styles, to see a couple different that where you can see like, oh, so there's some things that are generally expected. Like this is kind of how it should be organized. These are the things that, you typically expect. Um, but these are the places where I can kind of tailor it, make it my own. There's some choice here. Being able to see multiple different examples can be really helpful in that way. What other ways can we support autonomy, competence, and relatedness in our classes?
Well, Andy, when you didn't hear me and I wrote it into the chat, but because you'd moved on, I erased it. But you were talking about being prepared. Oops, sorry about that. Seems like my spam is working hard. One of the things that I think is important is to think about the first day of impression. And not only, I spend a lot of time dressing for success. So I think about what I'm going to wear that first day that brings an attention um, to what I'm speaking about because I teach in a college of architecture and we talk about design all day long. Um, but I also think not only about dressing for success, but preparing for success. And that means prepping all the scenarios that could happen in response to what I'm saying so that I'm going to be successful conveying whatever it is that I want the students to learn from me. So there's different ways to consider success as you work through the semester, not only what your students' feedback is like, but what are you doing that makes that really um, invigorating, not only invigorating, but just passionate about the subject that they then take control of that they begin to own it, earn it, and feedback on it. So for me, those are things that I listed that didn't get into the chat. So
Yeah, no, I think, and that is, that's Don likes to talk about peace. That P in peace is preparedness, right? We need to be prepared. And I think that with that as well, focusing on what are our objectives and how can we show that with design, right? Like I can show design in the way that I dress, I can show design in the way that I design my course materials, right? So thinking about how can I connect what I'm talking about in class in meaningful ways beyond just like the specific what I'm doing in class.
I think it's also about seriousness that if you come into class, like our students come to class sometime, they may not be able to not just respect you, but think that you take what you say to them seriously. because
Hmm.
you did not present yourself in a way that garners their respect. And it's not just what you say, but how you look and how you move in the room as well. In a studio environment or a lab environment, walking around the room, talking to students, as opposed to always being at the front of the room, makes a big difference on how they respond to
Hmm.
you and how well you're able to give them great feedback. Because I am a person who loves examples. I bring a lot of examples in the room, and
Hmm.
but I don't leave them in the room. That way they see them, they get a perception of what matters in terms of presentation, but they're not left there for them to copy. But let's be real, there's nothing new under the sun. You know what I'm saying? So in a way, when you do research, you're also learning from your lit review when you take it as something that can be incorporated into answering the question that you proposed on a master's report or a thesis. So it's no
Hmm.
different. It's no different.
Other thoughts about how we can manifest autonomy, competence, and relatedness in our classes?
So, right before this Zoom, I met with a student after class that I suspected had not done the work. And I had emailed the student and said, hey,
Oh, you just went on mute.
sorry.
I was
That poor
worried it was me again. I was like, oh
No,
no.
it's me. That poor student had to wait a week because I got sick last week too. So they
Mm.
were probably pretty nervous by now. Um, but the relatedness and motivation piece of this is the first thing I did when I talked to the student after class. We sat down and I said, first of all, how are you? She about burst into tears. So we ended up talking for longer about how she was doing and all of that. And I said, we'll talk about the assignment. We'll get to that. But by the time we got to that, she knew I was a safe person to talk to and just said, I'm just going to be honest. Here's what I did. And so I talked to her and said, I've had so many conversations with students about this. I've talked to, Camilla Roberts many times, the director of our honor integrity system. And I said, I know that she believes, and I agree with her, that the purpose of the honor and integrity system is not meant to be punitive. It is meant to be a learning opportunity. So if you can have that learning opportunity with me and you're already taking accountability, we can start with that. I mean, she was afraid she was going to fail the class, get kicked out of the university, all these things. And I said, you're already taking accountability. I want you to redo the assignment, you know. But if I hadn't started with that related piece, I don't know that she would have been, I don't know if it's a motivation thing. It's not, she would have been motivated by fear rather than being motivated by a relationship of trust, even though this is the first conversation I've had with her one on one. She only knows me from the beginning of class, you know, from the whole class. And so, um, I thought I'd bring that into the conversation, even though it's a different type of motivation than motivation to learn. It's just that motivation to be able to say, you know, face to face to your teacher, yeah, I did this thing I wasn't supposed to do, and that she knew I had the context for what was going on, you know, and she didn't use it as an excuse. It was just here's why I did what I did. You know, I knew her motivations, so yeah, so that ended up being a really great experience. I actually had two students I had the same conversation with and started the same way. And it's just I've actually gotten to where I don't want students to cheat, but it's going to happen. And so I've gotten to where I dread those conversations a lot less too. And I see them more, you know, as Camilla tells us, as a learning opportunity, but it's also a very special opportunity to connect with a student in a way that they probably don't expect. Um, so anyway, that's enough talking for me.
Yeah, that's one. It makes me think of, I started because I also oversee grad students teaching in our program. And a while back, I was like, I think it's really important to me to address any issues that I see coming up with curiosity first before anything else. And there's a lot of times where something, a GTA does something, and I think like, what, like, oh my gosh, like my internal first reaction is like, why would they do that? Oh no, what's happening? Like being angry, being frustrated. Um, and then like I take a beat and I say, okay, let's approach this with curiosity. I say, hey, can you tell me about what happened here? And there have been many moments where the GTA explains like, oh, well, this thing happened, and so this is how I responded. And once they explain it, I'm like, that's perfectly reasonable and maybe still not what I how I want them to do, but I'm like, I see why you would have done that. And like I appreciate like it makes perfect sense. And I think it was a, relatively responsible thing to do. I might give them some guidance, like next time I would prefer it if you handle it this way. But I find that approaching it with curiosity rather than suspicion or starting off being frustrated, one gets more honest answers. And a lot of times I'm the one who's misunderstanding what has happened or the situation, or I don't have the complete picture to be able to understand what's going on. And I think that, speaking with students, like we don't have the whole context of what's going on in their lives, and a lot of times like there's some hard stuff that they're dealing with. It's hard being a young adult, like everything about it being an adult is new and overwhelming, and they're trying to learn to like balance doing multiple things at the same time, things that for those of us who have been in this profession for a while, it's like, oh yeah, I'm juggling all day long. I have that down, but I couldn't do that when I was 20. So I can do that now because I've had lots of practice.
I think there's also the the possibility of remembering that we don't, as faculty, have all the answers. That's why we have counselors, counseling sessions, other ways that we can steer our students. But let me give you an example of something that occurred a number of years in my own college, where I had a student that I recognized had shifted his attention away from his work. And he was one of my best students because of something that I later found out was a personal traumatic experience for him. And we talked for hours after class about this. And I shared some of the same kind of humanistic ways of experiencing those things. And I never thought much about the conversation or where it could go. The next semester, I had another student with the exact same issue. And I sent that student to the previous student I'd had. The two of them formed a bond. And the next semester, I had a male student who was struggling with his academics. They connected with him. And later, I found out they had formed almost like a prayer group of guys in the college. That all of that led to support, emotional support, collective ability, um, encouragement between these gentlemen. And in the end, it led to something much larger on campus, which I don't need to talk about. But sometimes it's better to say, hey, we can talk. I can give you some ideas, but I'm a girl, you know, and you're a guy. And so maybe you need a guy to talk to. And that leads to other things that we don't expect to have happen. But when I found out they had formed this very strong bond and support group, I went, wow, that wasn't where I thought it would go. But you just never know where it's going to go.
I think that that's what you say. There's such a good point too, in that directing students to other people who may be more knowledgeable or just a different perspective. We are not and should not try to be superhuman. And there's a lot of places for support on campus. And so directing our students to places of support, one, like we should not be trying to carry everything ourselves. That's just too much and we're going to burn out, we're going to break and we don't want to do that. At least I don't want to do that. But also, making sure that you can connect students in a meaningful way so that they get their needs met even when we're not able to to do that, right? We're not able to meet all their needs. Like that's okay. We can't be everything to everyone, and we don't need to be.
And Andy, the biggest and most important thing in this was that the student, the third student who struggled, became one of our best students, more successful. We ended up putting him on a video that went around the college of his senior work. I mean, so you never know how much a student will blossom because of another student who can relate to them better than you could ever relate to them.
That's the power of that psychological need of relatedness, right? It's really important that our students feel connected and part of a group that can help them so much in feeling motivated in their coursework, and just overall an overall sense of well-being. So we have just a few minutes left. Anyone else want to contribute things that they do in their classes or would like to do in their classes, or questions related to autonomy, competence, and relatedness?
I'm going to give you another one because you know I have lots of them. We this year have divided our second semester into discipline specific studios, something we weren't sure we wanted to do. And each department has events for their students, and their clubs have events. So these are students who are in second semester who think they want to be in a particular discipline in their second year. So right now, and it's going to happen today, our students are a group of students club is starting a bowling um, event on Friday night at the Union. Now, our faculty did this a year ago as a faculty. And so it dawned on me, what better way to get these prospective students who are second semester, who say they want to be in this field, to form their own bowling team and come and play with upper level students in that same field so that they feel like they're part of that home. And my motivation is come beat the teachers because the teachers are forming a team in the department as well. And I said, go and show them up. I'll pay for it. So they are motivated to, and there's two classes. So I was just trying to get one class of 4 or 5 people. Now I've got both classes wanting to have their own team. And I think that's a cool way to say, this is what you want to be in. This is the profession you say you want to be in. Come and meet other people and play and have some fun instead of work. It's not that we are working all the time. Here's a great way to meet the faculty and meet the students in those fields and just relax with them and feel like this is your home before it is your official home.
That's great. Well, with that, we are getting to the end of our time. Karamatu, did you have any announcements that you wanted to make?
Yes, yes, I do. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so a quick one that I wanted to talk about is, first of all, I want to thank everyone for being present today. And well, my name is Karamatu Abdul Malik. I am Dr. Sosia's GTA and a staff at the TLC. And I want to remind all of you that you have the opportunity to earn free PD certificates through the TLC. It is for both faculty and GTA students. And also, we also have a hub on Teams, and if you want to attend our events, you'll be added to the platform. It is a great way to see and share more information on teaching related information. And also, we have other couple of events coming up that we would like you to have on your calendar. The first is going to be on Monday, March 2nd. This is university-wide and not just teaching related. It is the Perks and Resources Show showcase. So you should definitely check that out. Um, we will be dropping more information about that, but then you should know that TLC and the academic innovations will be tabling there. So please check it out. We also have the academic publishing event that we are going to be doing in conjunction with the New Faculty Institute and Graduate School, which will be taking place on Tuesday, April 7th from 2 to 4 p.m. Again, from Tuesday, April 7th from 2 to 4 p.m. We are still working on that logistics and we will tell you more about it. But one thing I can tell you for sure is that it's going to be a hybrid event. So we are going to be having two components, an in-person and a Zoom session. We are going to be talking about books, edited books, and peer reviews and how to go about peer review articles and how to go about that. We then also have the Subtle Showcase, which is going to be happening on Monday, May 11th, that afternoon in the Hemisphere Room 581. It's going to be taking place on Monday, May 11th, in the Hemisphere Room 581 at Hill Library. Um, we'll give you more information as it comes out. This is just some kind of save the date on your calendar. And then finally, we have Wakanzi, which is a segue to our main events. And Wakanzi will be happening from 22nd May to 27th May. 22nd May to 27th May. Last week we had a couple of amazing speakers who spoke extensively about that. I would encourage you to check out that recording on our TLC websites. And yeah, that is all that I have for you today. I apologize for the long announcements.
It was great. There's lots of exciting stuff coming up. Well,
Yes.
thank you all for your participation today. I
I had a
always love.
question for I just asked her, can one apply? Is it too early or too late to apply for the showcase?
That for is it for the showcase or
Yes,
for
for the sh
fancy?
no, for the showcase in May.
Oh, I think
I don't think that
Have
it's
they put it out
out
yet?
yet. Yeah, I
Okay,
don't think so.
all right.
it's yes, when it is, we will put out more information about that. We will call for proposals and
Good.
hopefully we get to see your ideas that you share on teaching on or even your research. So we will put out that information soon. But that reminds me on Wakanzi, the provost office is accepting applications to give scholarships to help cover your cost to attend Wakanzi. And that application is due to the provost office April 1st. So put that on your calendar.
Get that on your radar. Think about
Yes.
going. Could be great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all. It was lovely getting to chat with you, and I will see you in another professional development series event here Wednesdays at noon on Zoom. Have a great rest of your day.